Yeah.
Tell you about three major themes that I have found are generationally as being, again, huge drivers of conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Generational trauma, where we've come from, like nothing else. The second one I can't really remember right now. And then the third one is cultural gaslighting. Yeah. The idea that you should have something or that something's the right way. And then perceived normalcy. What we think is normal.
Is normal, yeah.
And these are huge sources of conflict. Exactly as you're saying. It's interesting culturally, when people, they'll talk about work-life balance.
Yeah.
But when you do a chart just doesn't have those two components. A chart has 12 different parts of the life. It delineates it very differently. And I know for me, my sun sign, Capricorn and Western, and it's Sagittarius and Vedic, but I really identify with the Capricorn part of it. So always trying to build, not because I want the material result, but because I'm always trying to build.
Yeah.
So when I don't see the tangible evidence of what I've done, I fixate on that. Yeah. And suddenly my life becomes about that. And the result's not changing, but my life becomes about that. And meanwhile, I'm less happy, I'm less healthy. All of the other parts, the relationships, nothing else matters because I'm so fixated on this one part. And so, in my own journey, it doesn't, no matter how hard you fixate on something, again, the cultural idea, the worldly idea that if you work harder, it will come. No, not necessarily. Maybe. No. If it's meant for you, it's coming. But if it's not meant for you, it will never result in what you think. It will result in the way that it should be resulting.
Yeah. I was sharing with Rebecca before we pressed the record button that I used to work ages ago at a country music radio station when I was right out of high school in the States. And there was this man who came on after me, and he used to play the really old country music, bluegrass and things like that. Mm-hmm. And what you were talking about just then reminds me of a song that he always used to play, which had the lyrics, work your fingers to the bone, and what do you get? Bony fingers. Because we do that. We do that to ourselves. We that's one, given if you work really hard that you are going to get, which is you'll probably get tired. But it's interesting you brought up that Capricorn approach because, one of the things that is really interesting is when you consider the concept of opposite signs, right? And, maybe that, leads into the concept of conflict resolution too. There's the whole concept of with Capricorn, there's the practical or the focusing on the plan or the structure. In some instances, there's the concept of, survival or taking care of most important material needs first. And what gets left out with Capricorn is the emotional needs, which is Cancer. And so there's always a little bit of that opposite side of the spectrum within us that we're needing to incorporate in order to be, more fulfilled in life. And it's it's finding that internal space where we're, as you were saying, resolving that conflict inside of ourselves so we can, be more whole, be who we are, right?
You and I had a session, and that's the way that we met. And when I was learning about the nakshatras and I was learning about my chart, two of the placements that I have Mars in Mula, and then I have Mercury, depending on how we draw the chart, if we're using, depending on how we draw the chart, I have that and two placements in Uttara Ashada. Mm-hmm. And both of these have to do with falling apart and things unraveling and things falling apart. Mm-hmm. And for the Uttara Ashada, what's really especially helpful is you mentioned it, and that it was exactly the example that I would have used. It's the sun sign of Martin Luther King and also Rosa Parks, interestingly.
Really?
People who, and she had Jupiter and yes, very, very interesting people. And it's this, I'll say like, I really identified with it. And then for the use of conflict resolution, to know what people have been through and to know who used that kind, like who else used that kind of energy and what their lives were about and what kind of work they were doing is incredibly helpful. So for example, those two individuals, they worked on things that they would never see the result of, never.
Yeah.
Rosa Parks, after she sat down on the bus, for the next 30 years, she never had steady employment again. She was chased out of Birmingham where she was. She and her husband went to Detroit, never had steady employment again. That was part of the path. And it wasn't, I don't think it was a surprise to her.
Right, exactly.
Right. And so the same with Martin Luther King Jr. He was, I think like something like 71% disapproval rating right before he died. He was not a popular person at the time.
No, he wasn't at all. No.
So eventually these things result in something, but not during your lifetime. It's not work that people thank you for.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to sound self-important when I say that. I'm saying that I know what I was working for. I know what I am working for.
Yeah.
And it's not, when you have other people looking at you, here's the conflict part of it. When you're actually in the life and you have people who are looking at you, nobody ever, I don't really run across a lot of people who are terribly encouraging, to be honest. I don't have a lot of people who say, this is really great what you're doing. I really want you to do well. It's usually not like that at all. It's usually people who are telling me how much I'm doing wrong. And I don't think this is me. I'm saying this because I think other people are going to listen to this and it resonates, because we're not supposed to say this. We're supposed to say everybody's so nice and supportive. And I don't really find that to be the case. I find a lot of people are very excited to tell you how much you're doing things wrong, where you're going to fail. And they're I have a lot of people kind of waiting around to watch when I fail. And it's just like, and it's odd how like different times of my life I've observed, it actually seems to make people happy, it's a strange thing to behold. So you can even internally say we have the divinities such as astrology and we know what we're doing, but you still have to live your life and you still have to be present with the people. You still have to get up in the morning and decide what you're doing next. And here's where the conflict resolution part comes in. Because when you're dealing with your family, when you're dealing with your place of work, when you're dealing with your sense of purpose, you still have to walk in the world.
Yeah.
And you still have to know what you are going to say, how you are going to behave, how you are going to conduct yourself, and have that align with the kind of person that you are and the integrity that you are. Because it's really easy to teach deception. It's really easy to deceive people. Very, very easy. Lots of sciences around, people come by it very naturally in the first place. But if you want to study those techniques, it's not a challenge. It's really easy to lie to people and it's really easy to get them to believe you. The part that it's difficult is when you lay out the information in a neutral manner and allow people to make their own choices based on information that is not biased. It is just straightforward. And it's the same way in our relationships. We try to angle things certain ways because we don't want the person to leave. We don't want the situation to end. We want it to turn out a certain way.
Sometimes we're not always conscious of that too. It's interesting. Yeah.
Exactly.